It's no longer the top 10. It's now the top 5. Hey comic book fans, welcome back to Comic Book Corner 2.0, and fans, you're back with me, Mike Spider Slayer, getting ready to bring you my top 5 comic books of the week, and this is for the week of March 13th, 2019. That's right, guys. This is new streamlined series where I'm going to give you my top 5 comics of the week. I'm going to give you an honorable mention comic, and I'm also going to give you my worst book of the week as well. So if you guys like this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, always important. And if you don't want to miss a single video from me, again, hit that notification bell. And before we get started, there are going to be spoilers in this video, so if you have not read your comics yet, fans, go ahead, read your comic books, and come back and watch this video. So without further ado, fans, let's get started with this week's countdown. So, here we go. My least favorite book of the week, and probably my most disappointing comic of the week, guys, is going to Wonder Twins issue 2. Okay, this was so disappointing. I loved the first issue of this. I loved how we were introduced to Jaina and Zane. I loved how they did this mysterious, this crazy little battle with Mitzelplick, and they put him in his place. And I love seeing a little bit of history. I love seeing them fit in high school, and it was a very relatable comic. This just took a turn for the worst. Everything that you saw in that first issue, it's almost completely opposite in this issue. I did not feel like I could relate to these characters. I felt like the humor was forced in this book. I felt that things were disjointed in this book, where there was too many little plot lines going on. And by the time I got to the end of this issue, I did not care. Okay? We get to see Jaina and Zane. They wind up going to this prison, and they get to see how Earth's prison system actually works. Because in their world, there was no prison system. So what happens in this issue is they wind up getting introduced to Beast Boy. And Beast Boy kind of gives them a go-around of how the system works. And he challenges them to kind of do the thing that superheroes do here on Earth. You know, be the good guys, put the bad guys in prison, and whatnot. So they go and they do this, and they come across these, not C-listers, not even D-listers, but like F-lister characters that you could give a shit about. And they wind up putting this guy away in prison by the name of Druncula. And he is like this villain who is in AA because he's like a vampire that sucks people's blood. But he would suck people's blood and get drunk off of them because they drank wine or alcohol stuff. And he hasn't done that in a very long time. So they put him in this prison, and they wound up putting this guy in another prison with other inmates. And he winds up sucking their blood, and he's like, I was 30 days sober. And I'm like, this is dumb. There wasn't anything funny about this particular issue. There was a couple of panels that made me laugh. The artwork was good in this book, but at the end of the day, when I got to this cliffhanger, I was like, oh my god, this is horrible. This took a turn for the worst. I wanted them to still be in high school, or I didn't care about this field trip. I wanted them to interact more in high school, so it makes it relatable to trying to fit in with other kids and do these different types of missions with the Justice League, not necessarily these F-list of villains that they come across. Is very uneventful and just unfulfilling, and that's why it was my worst pick this week. So I don't think I'm going to be picking up issue 3. If this is how this one ended, man, so disappointing. Alright, so let's go to the honorable mention comic book, okay? So this one is going to go to Dead Man Logan, issue 5, I think we're on. Yes, this is issue 5. So this surprised me, and actually it's not in my top 5, because of the way it abruptly ended. We're halfway through this, and we have a story arc in this series, where I thought this whole thing was going to continue all the way through. Obviously, it's going to, with Logan dealing with the loss of his healing powers, and eventually he's going to die or go to the wastelands, whatever the case may be. But we've had this whole story with Miss Sinister and Sin and Mysterio, And by the time you get done with this, it concludes. Mysterio winds up completing his mission and gets away scot-free and goes back to the psychiatric ward, takes off his helmet, takes off his costume. He's like, I don't want to be bothered ever again. So it's like, wow, this is kind of weird. So what can we expect from this now? And we get to see our heroes. They infiltrate the Neo Hydra base. We get to see Mysterio kind of play the tricks on the bad guys and whatnot and succeed on, you know, escaping their clutches. And at the same time, he escapes Logan's clutches as well, as he makes him think that Logan killed him. So Logan and the rest of the guys, they just leave supposedly the dead body behind and they go back to base, and Logan says, hey, I have one more thing I have to take care of before I can disappear again. We don't know what that is, but I was like, wow, I kind of didn't expect this type of ending. It was a good book, but it wasn't like a really solid ending to this story arc, but it had its funny moments. Overall, it was a good story. It just didn't crack my top 5 this week. Alright, so speaking of top 5, we're moving on to the top 5. And my number 5 this week goes to a bold new era of Transformers. That's right, fans. So if you haven't read any of IDW's comic books that have to deal with the Transformers in the past, well, never fear, this is a good jumping on point for you. And if you are familiar with Transformers in any shape or form, whether you watch the cartoon or whatnot, you have an idea of who these characters are. And yes, it is a good jumping on point because this takes place before that war. You get introduced to Megatron. You get introduced to Optimus Prime, but not as Optimus Prime. He is Orion Pax at this point. And all that's going on is that we have 2 senators of Cybertron, and they just have different points of view. That's where we're at in this history of Autobots, okay? And we get introduced to a new Autobot by the name of Rubble. He's newly forged, and you get to see things unravel through his eyes, which I thought is kind of interesting. It's just a fresh new look. It's like you're almost like Rubble, seeing things unfold in front of you, and I like that aspect of writing here. So I thought that was really cool. And the main characters in this particular issue are Rubble, Bumblebee, Windblade, who was introduced in the series recently from IDW, Orion Pax, Ironhide, and then Megatron. And again, we get to see what's kind of going on. There's just these protests and things like that, and it made for an interesting issue. It wasn't too wordy for me. I find myself intrigued by it. I'm very curious to see how far along they're going to progress until it leads until this war. So I'm very anxious to see what happens here. Do we get to see how Megatron forges his troops, how he becomes the Decepticons and whatnot? I don't know, we'll see. But the artwork was pretty good in this book. There was a couple different artists in here, but again, I think the coolest thing was seeing it from Rubble's eyes. So we'll see what happens with Transformers. I really enjoyed it. I can't wait for issue 2. Alright, so moving on to my number 4 comic of the week, and my number 4 book was a new number 1, another one, and this was the Magnificent Ms. Marvel issue 1. I decided to choose, you know, these new number 1s as part of the 7 out of my pull list to discuss, and Ms. Marvel, you know, made that list, and it made my top 5 out of this list, and it says a brand new era starts here. And Saladin Ahmed is the one that actually, you know, gets to carry this series forward. And the one important thing that's very important in Carmela's life is her family. And the thing that they touch upon here is her family right from the get-go, and kind of her supporting cast, which I thought was really good. And that's what makes this series good, because the one thing that Carmela doesn't have is really good villains. So you got to rely on that supporting cast surrounding her to make this a solid series. And it's cool how it opens up, because we're on this different world, and we get to see this father actually telling a story to his daughter about Ms. Marvel, how she's this legendary hero and she's known across the universe. And he gives her characteristics, which I like, because if you're a new reader here, you're trying to get accustomed to Ms. Marvel and what her personalities are, what her powers are. And we get to see kind of her origin tale retold in a way that's not boring, right? She gets to tell it to her one of her best friends by the name of, I think her name is Nakia, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I think that's what her name is. I always forget her name. So you get to see that origin tale and whatnot. And then the other thing that was really cool in this book is that we wind up getting to see that her father, supposedly it's her father now, we're not 100% sure by the time you get to the end of this issue, finds out that she's Ms. Marvel. And her mother said that she would keep her secret, always not telling anybody, but she decided to tell her father. Now, there's some other secrets being held here, too, when you read this book, because it seems like the father could be suffering from something, and he wants to know everything about his daughter or whatnot. So, I don't know. We don't get the full outcome here, but we can see that Carmela is very upset. She feels like her mother has betrayed her, and so... Excuse me. So it feels like that her mother has betrayed her. And you know what? They can yell at her daughter all they want. She's still going to be Ms. Marvel at the end of the day. And by the time we get closer to the end of this issue, we wind up seeing that Carmela does some creatures, some battle against these cool-ass creatures like this wolf monster and this eagle creature that's flying around. And the artwork is gorgeous when you see these battles. I'm like, man, this is awesome, you know? So really cool stuff there. But the thing that you see, okay, is that you see these creatures like, they completely melt. And you're like, damn. I'm like, that's insane. And then supposedly these creatures are like attacking the house, right? And you see her come across her parents, and then her parents start to melt. And you're like, oh shit. You're like, what the hell is going on here? So it's some weird alien invasion that's going on in this book right now. So really cool stuff. I like Ms. Marvel, and I love how they, again, touched on her supporting cast, because that's what makes her. So really cool stuff. If you haven't checked it out yet, I definitely say check out the magnificent Ms. Marvel issue 1. All right, so moving on to the top 3, and my number 3 comic of the week goes to the Avengers No Road Home. This is issue 5. Last issue was spectacular, learning about the origin tale of Nyx, who is the Queen of Night. And you can't help feel bad for her family, how the gods actually exiled her, right? So this issue actually continues this story about her and the Hulk and the heroes doing battle against each other to recover these shards, because these shards is what gives Nyx her powers. Okay, so we actually see this battle commencing, and we get to see Nyx. She totally gets the upper hand against our heroes here. Vision is falling apart and whatnot. One of her sons is regaining a shard and whatnot too. And but what happens in this issue is we wind up seeing Scarlet Witch kind of rise to the occasion here to kind of overcome Nyx's spell on her. And so what happens is she teams up, what's her name? Spectrum, or I don't even know this character's name. That's how bad I am with some of these characters when it comes to these Avengers. Yeah, Spectrum. She teams up with Spectrum, and she winds up using this spell to knock the shards loose, and she winds up being teleported completely somewhere else, and the shards wind up going into different areas too. Hulk winds up defeating one of Nyx's children and like breaks his neck, and you're like, oh my god, dude, that's so intense. But that's Immortal Hulk, right? He's gonna punish the people. He has basically no mercy for anybody. So that was really cool too. But the thing that stood out in this issue again was where Scarlet Witch went to, okay? Scarlet Witch goes to a completely different world, and who does she come across? Well, she comes across Conan the Barbarian. So that's how he gets introduced into the main Marvel universe here. And it looks like some way or another, Scarlet Witch is going to transport him back, and they're going to all come across each other in this series eventually. But the scene that really hit it for me again was that Immortal Hulk part where he destroys Hypnos, which was what's it called? The Nyx's son. I mean, that was awesome there. The artwork is brilliant in this book. The colors make everything really pop, and the facial expressions and the character emotions in this is awesome. This is a great book, a great weekly series. If there's a way to do a weekly series, this is the way to do it, guys. They did it with No Surrender, and they're doing it again with No Road Home. I definitely say pick this book up. This was my number 3. Let's move on to my number 2. All right, so my number 2 book of the week, and you might be surprised because you're going to be like, okay, Mike, what's going to be your number 1 this week? Well, my number 2 was The Amazing Spider-Man issue 17. Honestly, that 16 HU that dealt with Felicia was a perfect Amazing Spider-Man book. Here, I love Humberto Ramos's artwork. I think it looks great, but that last artist that did that 16HU, that art for me was much better. But here we get to see Kraven. Kraven the Hunter, okay? We're all familiar with him, obviously, with Kraven's Last Hunt. We know what happened to him. We know what happened to Spider-Man. And in this issue, we get to see a rediscovery of Kraven on how he was brought back to this world, and he wants to die again. He wants to truly die, but he has to take care of one last thing, of course, and it has to deal with Spider-Man. Okay, so we've got to see in these previous issues how all these creatures have been captured, and it all has to do with Kraven's crazy game, okay? And the main thing that has to be captured is Spider-Man to get everything going again. So based off of what happened in the last issue, we wind up seeing Black Cat, she's captured. We wind up seeing Connor's kid, he's captured. And, you know, of course, she's being used as bait to get Spider-Man here, okay? So what happens is Spider-Man has just been dealing with a sickness, an illness, a flu. He hears those drums beating. He's trying to find Black Cat. And so who does Spider-Man come across? Well, he comes across Kraven's son, the cloned son. That's bigger, stronger, younger than Kraven. And he basically captures Spider-Man in this issue. We wind up seeing, obviously, that Arcade has been working with Kraven to develop this dome that's going to go over Central Park. And once Spider-Man is captured, we wind up seeing the game begin. The dome does go over Central Park. The villains are released in Central Park. And the main person, of course, in there is Spider-Man. And, of course, it's not Spider-Man in his red and blue costume. Kraven decides to put him in this, like, the symbiote suit, the black suit Spider-Man, just to play, you know, just to, you know, go back to nostalgia-like reasons, because Spider-Man back in Kraven's Last Hunt was wearing that black suit at that time. So I thought that was really cool. And by the time you get to the end of this issue, we see Kraven's little robots going after all the, either the villains, and Spider-Man, and everything else. So this is quite interesting. I don't know exactly where this is going to lead or what's going to happen next, but this is a cool storyline, and I'm happy to see Kraven Hunter back. And yeah, this is going to be pretty much a good journey going forward here. We have quite a few issues that deal with this, so be ready for you know, a little bit of a ride in this book. I think we have another book coming out in March, which is 18, and in April we have 18. In April we have Amazing Spider-Man 18HU, then 19HU, then 20, and then it goes all the way through May. So be ready, get your popcorn ready. This is going to be a long haul, long event for the Amazing Spider-Man. So what got number 1 then this week, guys, huh? So number 1 this week, and I was all about to drop this book, but my number 1 book of the week goes to Red Hood Outlaw, issue 32. I was shocked by this book. I'm like, this book is awesome again. You know, last issue we find Jason, he's like finding his way. He's in this other town. He rescues Bunker. It's like, where are you going with this? And in this issue, it's all for this reason. It's right here why all these characters he's come across, he's done with them. You know, it's awesome. It's really cool. Artwork is really good in this book. I've never had an issue with that. But we get to see what happens 5 miles offshore, right? It's the Iceberg Lounge, always run by a penguin. And we recently known, obviously, that Jason Todd shot Penguin in the head. He tried to kill him, but Penguin has recently since recovered. And we're kind of wondering, okay, it's the iceberg. Where is the Penguin? Because all of a sudden, Jason Todd now is in charge of it. And he's in charge of the iceberg, and he's going to clean up Gotham this way because he's just going to be Jason Todd. He's basically not going to be Red Hood. And so when you're reading this issue, you see Alfred, he comes across this whole situation, and he's like, oh my God. He's like, I can't believe this. And he's like, Master Bruce. And the next thing you see is Batman comes, and he's going to have a talk with, obviously, Jason Todd. But you get to see all the people that he's come across through his series in recent issues. He's recruited to help him run the iceberg, right? So we get to see, what's her name? Susie Sue. We get to see her sisters. We get to see Bunker, who's like his security. We get to see Wingman, who is his wingman, help all run this whole iceberg thing. And it was some great scenes in here with the Falcone family, which I thought was hysterical. And yeah, it was really cool. And once Batman makes his appearance, Jason Todd is such a freaking dick to him. He's like, yeah, he's like, I done all those things as Red Hood, but what are you going to do when you take me to jail? Because I'm just Jason Todd. I didn't do anything wrong. Batman is going to take Jason Todd to Arkham, one of the sons of Bruce Wayne. It's like, what could he have done? And so he knows he has Batman by the balls, and so Batman has nothing to do but leave because Jason Todd hasn't done anything wrong. So you're like, man, how smart was Jason Todd there, just outsmarting Bruce Wayne? And Bruce Wayne just like, and just, runs away. And so the craziest thing is you also find out what happens to Penguin. Where is Penguin in all this? And so Jason captures the Penguin, puts him in a freaking like fish tank, and that Jason Todd can't see him, but obviously the Penguin can see him through this mirrored glass or non-mirrored glass or whatever it is, and he can see everything that's happening. So he keeps him in this prison while he's running the Iceberg Lounge. Dude, it was so good. I was like, wow, this is awesome. It's like, just when you thought that this was shit, it's like, this is a good beginning to a new story arc. Now, where it goes from here, I'm not sure. Who knows? But nevertheless, it was a fun read, a good introduction to the new story arc, and I just had a smile on my face by the time I got done reading it. So, there you guys have it. There are the books for the week. There were my top 5, my honorable mention, and my worst pick. So now in the comments below, guys, I want you to pick what your top 5 comics of the week were. What was your least favorite book of the week? And fans, as always, thank you for watching Comic Book Corner 2.0. If you like this video, again, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to that channel, and don't forget to hit that all-important notification button so you don't miss a single video from me. And guys, I'll see you real soon. Thanks for watching, everyone, and thanks for the support. Take care. Bye.